Well, this is kind of exciting. We've got a Zoom guest.
We have a guest. This is fantastic.
We're using new technology on Not on Record podcasts. We're
well, that just shows how we're a little bit of Luddites. So it's old technology, but new for us right now on it, and it's great.
So welcome to Not on Record to Bill Corbitt, who has a sort of a nonprofit that he's running. We're going to talk in detail about what you're doing. It's a very specific cause, and it connects to fathers who are being alienated from their children and parental alienation. And you've got this amazing website that you're running. And so we're kind of excited to have you here to talk about your perspective and what it is that you're trying to do to assist people who end up finding themselves engaged in the legal system, specifically veterans. And your website is veteranfathers.com.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate the time. I mean, it's really super. I've been watching Joseph and you guys and your podcast for a while. So when I got the invite, I was very honored to be able to be here. So I appreciate the time.
Well, it's lovely having you here. And as I said, we wanted to do a shout out to that fantastic bow tie you're wearing this evening. So right on.
Just for you, Joseph.
Thank you.
So tell us, what is it that got this project started for you?
So I went through a bad divorce, alienation, false allegations, and you go through phases of healing when you go through that alone. You go through depression. I thought thoughts of suicide. And as I went through it, as you start to heal, I started to realize I can't be the only one. There has to be others out there. And I couldn't. So I used to be a federal agent. I was for about eight or 10 years. And I was very familiar with the civil and criminal side of the house. But as it started getting worse, my attorney said, "Bill, this is not civil law." And I went, "Yep, it says right here, civil law." And she was like, "No, this is an offshoot." And I couldn't get my head around that, because you spend so many...
Sorry to interrupt for a second. I just want to make it clear that you're in the U.S., you're in Georgia. Right? So the legal system you're talking about is not exactly the same as the Canadian system, but I just wanted to make that clear before you go further.
Yeah. No, thanks for the clarification. But I started asking questions, started going to community groups, counseling, veteran groups, and I found out that, mine was bad, but there's some that are horrible. Like we know veterans that are homeless because the judge ruled so significantly against them and took their benefits, they can't afford rent. They're one's actually living beside a dumpster beside a grocery store. From that, the ex-wife took him back to court, got full custody because he can't take care of the kids. He has nowhere for him to sleep in his car. And I started getting more and more horror stories. And so me and a couple of veterans I knew, we started doing some research. And we really come up with my harebrained idea of starting a nonprofit, but we couldn't figure out what to support. There's a lot of veteran nonprofits available. So we did the whole research thing, putting together a lot of demographics, brought in a lot of data from a lot of different points. And during one of our, we were doing Zooms at the time. During one of our meetings, I come up with a harebrained idea. I said, we need to focus on a select demographic that's the most impacted and least represented, but also has the biggest impact. And we have to figure something that makes us unique. So we pretty much figured out it was easy with the research coming in. It was veteran dads were the most underrepresented in family court child custody matters. They couldn't afford retainer fees. They were doing everything pro se, which you're familiar with that process. The judges really don't like it because you're not familiar with evidentiary procedure, court procedure. That's not your wheelhouse. And they were stumbling around and losing, and it was just horrible hearing these horror stories come in. But then we took a look at both the men's rights activists and the father's rights activists. And I said, there's been men's rights activists, father rights activists been out there for over 100 years, but nothing's changed. What are we missing? So I made a flippant idea. I said, no one's litigating. And everybody's passed it off. Well, come about when we finished our research, they're like, yep, you're right. No one's litigating. And we backed that into a lot of the women's rights movements, feminist movements, and we found there's a direct, almost one-to-one correlation. And we have hundreds of cases that we pulled in as examples of litigation that occurred to get the rights of women solidified and codified in law. And I went, okay, the men are not litigating. Okay, so we can start. We're going to focus on veteran dads for several reasons. One, we're veterans, and two, they're the most underrepresented, need the most help. And three, it's going to benefit all fathers and men. And you're familiar with law more so than I am. The law doesn't say, okay, this law is for moms, this law is for dads, this law is for veterans. It's not built that way. It's not designed that way. So we took the approach, it's going to benefit everybody, including the children the most. And when you go through alienation, you're well versed in it. The children are the ones that carry that impact, and it stays with them for a long time.
And would you say for veterans, is it like specific impact in that you're deployed and you're away from the home for a long time? Does that play a larger role compared to other situations?
Right. So there's two types of military people. There's active duty military that actually do deployments and fulfill the military role. And then there's after your military service, you have veterans. Okay. We're working with both active duty military in family law and child custody matters. And we have a large group of veterans we're working with. So we deal primarily with veterans who have already completed their service, but it doesn't mean we alienate active duty service members. Okay. So that's a very good distinction.
Okay. I was just curious, though, with those who have been deployed, were married, had children, come back, and then they are veterans, and let's say the marriage breaks up afterward, they would be at a disproportionately more difficult position because of, having been deployed and maybe experiencing active duty, etc. They're going to be experiencing a number of issues acclimating back to society and then becoming a veteran. So they could be particularly vulnerable if there is a divorce proceeding and a very acrimonious custody battle. So we can see that there's, a myriad of other factors and problems that would be unique to veterans.
There is. And I see it across the board. I hear from veterans weekly. And when they return from a deployment architecture, they run into an instance of the marriage looks like it's not going to be solidified. It's not going to last. And so now they're looking at getting out of the military. And unfortunately, and it's very common knowledge when you get out of the military, essentially the government doesn't care about you anymore. They just go, okay, here's your process and paperwork, finish it up, go to personnel, get everything signed, and you're done. And they pretty much wipe their hands of you. And so that's why there's so many veteran groups that have gotten started to help these veterans acclimate to a new job, give them job training, give them exposure. They don't even know how to write resumes. So, there's veteran groups that help with those things. And what you said, Joseph, is very, very true. And where that comes into play, where we're seeing spikes, is veteran family law-based suicides. So you have a veteran returning. He's been in a combat situation. He may have PTSD, he may not. His family's starting to dissolve through his fingertips. He can't fix it. He's going to lose his children. He's going to get his benefits, and his everything's going to be impacted. And he's sitting there getting out of the military or out of the military. He's out of that wonderful team spirit architecture. Now he's in the civilian world where it's totally different. When I got out of the military, I was like, oh my God, they operate differently than we did in the military. It's a transition. It takes a while. And from that, they suffer depression. They get the pressures of family court put on them. And they do look at fighting thoughts of suicide. And some of them actually do complete it because of those pressures. And that's where, and I've heard from veterans in Canada as well, we hear that all the time of no one understands, no one cares, the laws are against me, I show up guilty and I have to prove my innocence, that's against my constitutional rights. It's a repetitive, ongoing story. It never ends. And I'm like, this has got to stop. It has to stop.
And can I ask a question? So with these battles that go on in court, do you see as pardon the pun, ammunition from one of the applicants in there that they're using domestic violence issues, whether it doesn't go through the criminal process, but used in the family process to alienate and to thwart attempts at custody and access?
Yeah, it's the popular term put around it is the silver bullet. So they make false accusations that there's violence in the household, and from that they get temporary restraining orders or temporary protection orders to alienate the father further from the children. Now, what's interesting is, and we haven't completed our research on it, but what we have found, and we found this input coming in from other countries, Canada, South Africa, England, Ireland, and parts of South America, is having children around actually helps veterans with PTSD. It's almost like a placebo. It's a calming effect on the veteran, because now he knows he has to focus on something besides those memories coming up, those thoughts coming up, reacting adversely to certain situations that in his mind are valid, but he's in a peacetime environment now, so he's not actually learning there's a difference yet, and it is mental scarring. And what we've been hearing is, hey, we deal with PTSD veterans all the time, and when they get around their kids, they're like an even plane, so they're a totally different person.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You mentioned the phrase "the silver bullet." Now, this is something that I've come across quite a few times in my advocacy and stuff, and it is a fairly well-known phrase. But it is kind of intriguing when you look at veterans who are trained to deal with bullets, and the one bullet you can't fight is the silver bullet. And just to describe what that is basically the accusation of some sort of domestic violence, which is automatically believed by the system, and it's a guaranteed way for a woman to get power and control in a divorce situation.
Right.
Would you agree?
No, you're exactly right. It backs into aspects of coercive control. It backs into, so in the military, we go through a lot of extensive training, especially in high threat situations. And when the brain gets in a situation that doesn't know how to handle it, it falls back on training. One of the veterans who's joined our group and is helping substantially is Jim Sisko, and he wrote a very well-known best-selling author about his experience in the Gulf. And he even said in one of his interviews, and I've said it repeatedly as well, is as a military veteran, when you're in a high-pressure situation, fall back on your training. There's no training for this. You don't know what to do. And I didn't know about the silver bullet. I didn't know that was a divorce tactic. I had false allegations levied against me, and I was aghast. I was like, why would she do that? Why? What is the purpose? There's no end game in this. Well, it damages permanently. I'm gonna tell you that right up front, and I'm not going to put any bones around it. We're holding an open house today, and there are veterans coming who've had false allegations levied against them, TPOs, TROs against them. They have all the evidence it was false. They can't get a job now. So, and here's my biggest,
because of false criminal allegations.
Yes.
So that doesn't go away like we have it here. Once a charge is laid, even if it's withdrawn or you're found not guilty on a search, it's not going to go away. So you have the same problem we have.
It's permanently damaging. There's veterans here can't even get a job at McDonald's, and one of them called up corporate McDonald's and said he knows some people. He said, "Why can't I get a job to flipping burgers?" They said, "Because you're TPO. We see you as violent." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to sue you. Send me your HR record." He says, "Good luck. You're not going to win." Everybody does it. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, when you go through your law school, in your last third or fourth year of law school, you go through labor law. You know these things. Judges know these things. But they don't give a damn. They don't give a flying flip.
No, it's this. If what you're describing is very similar to what we have in Canada, so trying to get rid of an entry on your record, even when withdrawn, if it's a domestic related or sexual related, is impossible. Lawsuits have failed in Canada. Court of Appeal has ruled against several lawsuits, and so some people are essentially a write-off for certain types of employment. And just one question, when you're looking at these types of allegations that come up, there's obviously then a stereotype that's specific to veterans because of their service. So is there a stereotype about military service and therefore they're more prone to violence? Is that something that's used in the process to try and stigmatize and then use that type of stereotype against a veteran?
I would say veterans are stigmatized, and they are stigmatized against their aggression and their willingness to fight. So if I'm looking at fathers by and large, the biggest input I get from veterans is, "I'm going to fight till the day I die. I'm going to keep fighting this." Well, the courts look at them as a problem child. Oh, this is a dad that went through a bad divorce, and oh well, he's a veteran. He's going to make trouble, and he's going to stir the pot. And I'm like, so what? Do you follow the legal process? What's your problem? Get over yourself. Why do you think you're above a veteran and you've sat the bench in your civilian life in the air-conditioned courthouse your whole life? How dare you?
Yeah.
Right.
Insulting, you know? And that's the way I look at it, is like, and I take a hard line, and I should. I believe veterans should take a hard line and go, Judge, how dare you sit up there on that air-conditioned bench in your HVAC facility that I help protect and keep terrorists from blowing you into ashes, and you look down your nose at me because I'm fighting? I'm a fighter. I'm a warrior. That's how I was trained. It's in my DNA. I'm not going to give up because I know I'm right.
So that's a palpable stigma which is applied in cases that you've seen. You're building research on that then.
Well, yeah, we got a bunch of things we're looking at. I mean, that's on one of the burners we're going to bring to the front is, why is there this stigma around veterans? You train them to be warriors. You train them to go fight. You train them to never give up. But now in civilian life, they're supposed to crawl in their pea blanket in the corner and wet their pants because you told them to, that the battle's over, when they know you violated the law. They know you violated their civil and constitutional rights. They know with willful misconduct, and that perks some ears up in that room, willful misconduct, you intentionally violated law. Because here's the argument in court. Well, Judge, did you complete your labor law course? Did you pass the bar? Yes. You didn't know this. Like in my case, Judge David Dickinson looked and said, well, you're willfully underemployed. I said, hell no, I was fired. She filed a TPO against me. My company let me go. I had to have a job or I couldn't pay my damn rent. I didn't have a choice to get the job that was available. Not only that, but I had an executive job. Go out and get an executive job now with a falsified TPO on your record. Good luck.
Yeah, same thing as in Canada.
David Dickinson, we're going to sue you for abject poverty. I don't care. And I take a hard line and I get really excited about this because that's the law. When you step over the line, you violate someone's rights. I don't care if you got a Teflon robe on or you're the second coming of Christ descending from heaven. You go to jail. That's it. That's the law.
Tell us what a TPO is.
Well, but do you have... Yeah, okay, first define a TPO.
What's a TPO?
Here in the States, we have TPOs and TROs. There's temporary protection order and a temporary restraining order. They're kind of the same one.
Yeah, and they're all based on a threat of violence.
Yes. Threat of violence, stalking, it could be anything. They just make the shit up.
And of course, aside from the courts, you don't get any support from politicians on this issue.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. It's like I walk in and I'm radioactive. Oh, you're veteran fathers. They look at the website and they go, oh, you guys set up to litigate? No, I ain't got the time. My schedule's full. It's like, if you look on our website, we have 2 funding campaigns running. The second one is Daddy's House. Okay. So we're looking to set up a home for fathers, not just veteran fathers, for fathers who are getting away from domestically violent situations with their kids. Okay. Guess how many there are in the States?
Yeah, we have a similar problem here where there was 0.
Yeah, but your population is 10 times our population.
There's now 1, but it's like what you're describing is like a domino effect, where as soon as the silver bullet is put in action, then there's like a restraining order, and then that domino hits the next domino, and then it just becomes this big disaster.
So can you tell us a little bit more? Like, we share very common features in our system as to how veterans and other parents can be really at the whim of the system and wind up being alienated and suffer other consequences. But tell us a bit more about what the foundation then is going to try and put in place, because one thing you said, which is great, is trying to create these shelters or homes for fathers with their children who are trying to escape violence at home. So that's a very laudable initiative. What else are you trying to do? Because they need all sorts of assistance for litigation, financial assistance, because they're disadvantaged with employment. So can you elaborate a little bit, since you're on this program? I think people would like to really hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the top promotion we're running right now is to do just that, Joseph. It's to set up litigation support. So if they come to us and go, hey, look, it's a non-contested divorce, I just need money for an attorney, we'll help them by giving them an interest-free loan that says, here's the money, go get a retainer and get all this done. Or if they need, I think it's $250 last I saw, they can do it online, but they just don't have the money. And also too, we're looking to help them out go through the family court process. In our website, you'll notice a segment of it of, hey, we'll help your attorneys investigate. We're looking to online and train veterans on becoming licensed and certified private investigators. With that, I bring on board a lot of my IT experience, or we're going to bring on what in the IT community we call OSINT, open source intelligence gathering efforts. We're building out a brand new server environment that's going to tap into all these feeds, and we'll be able to offer that to the attorneys as evidentiary product if they want to use it. When I went through my divorce, I got 35 years as a digital forensic investigator. I did the OSINT. I found multiple affairs. I found, travel to Texas where I'm like, why is she going to Texas when I'm on an engagement? I mean, this makes no sense. Well, come on. We know why she went to Texas. And the attorney said, you can't use it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't use it? Well, the scene is you're stalking her. I'm like, what the hell? I've never been accused of stalking anybody when I present OSINT in a criminal or civil court. Why is it now? Well, it's just the way the court's going to look at you. Right. As dominating and a bad boogeyman. And I did a video on it. And after I put that video, what's interesting is other recognized experts in the family law community text me on the side or send me DMs and said, my God, I wish I had you as a client. I would have loved to put you on that witness stand. Because here's why. All forensics, what typically happens is you have the initial baseline image, and from that you make working copies that have a hash value match. You share the working copies through discovery with the other party. They're allowed to bring in their own forensic expert and look at it. And then the two forensic experts meet in court, one for the plaintiff, one for the respondent, and you basically say, what did you find? This is what I found. What did you find? Did you find the same thing? Yeah, but I also found this. Well, okay, great. That's the way forensics is done in court, not in family court, at least not in the States.
Are you attracting any lawyers to your foundation?
Yeah. We've got a really nice lady out of New York City that found us. There's you, Joseph. And that's what's interesting is even the American Bar Association wrote an article about how toxic family court is. Think about that. A professional foundation in the legal community here in the States even published their own article about that. And I put it on one of my feeds. So the legal community is aware of it. They're aware how toxic and horrible it is against fathers. Well, if they're aware and they're doing nothing about it, to me, guess what they just did? One act in further conveyance constitutes what? A conspiracy. Okay, so I look at the family court system like I would as an investigator, as a federal investigator. What am I facing? Guess what it meets the profile for? To the T. A crime cartel. So how do you tear apart a crime cartel? You go after the lower ranked soldiers. Perps. You start tearing apart one at a time. It's like they tell everybody, they go, how do you know your litigation model will work? I'm like, it's grounded in historical case law. Look at the tobacco lawsuits. You think one big firm come in, filed a national lawsuit against tobacco? No. It was one suit at a time with families. They then came on and said, hey, we got something here. Contacted all the attorneys, brought in all the information, started doing more depositions, more reviews, more discovery, more subpoenas, and they put together a national class action. Same thing with the OxyContin suits. Okay, it starts at the lower level. As soon as we start putting deputy sheriffs, as soon as we start putting law enforcement officers, as soon as we start putting attorneys in prison, guess what's going to happen? That house of sand, that crime cartel is going to start to collapse. Because as soon as a judge gets notice of civil suit, guess what he does? He calls the politicians. And it's a standard model in physics called the ripple effect. Okay, as that ripple gets wider, it brings in more parties. And I bet you, and you know this from civil proceedings, Joseph, this is along your key avenue of expertise. What happens sometimes in civil proceedings, you find actions and conduct of criminal activity through discovery, subpoenas, and depositions and warrants. You can get a civil warrant here in the States. Okay, now you find actions of criminal activity. Guess what? It now expands. It may expand into a politician, a U.S. senator, a U.S. House representative figure. I don't care. They violated the law. They crossed the line by going after veterans and their kids. My dream.
I think it's one of the things you're doing that I think is really important. And I have a nonprofit that I run, helping falsely accused and wrongfully convicted, and it is difficult to get resources brought together. I think one of the important things you're doing is giving people hope and giving them a place where they can describe their experiences and connect with each other. What would your advice be, the primary thing that you would think, if you could say anything to people who are finding themselves in this situation, what do you think is the most important thing for them to hear?
Don't delete yourself. Don't do it. I mean, I was milliseconds away.
It's a lasting pain, eh, Bill?
It'll never go away.
Yeah.
And I can't emphasize enough, don't believe yourself. And here's why. If they're putting that much pressure on you, she already has a number 2 lined up. She wants you out of the picture. Okay? So just don't do it. You owe your kid to, at one time, grow up and look at what an awesome dad they got. What a hero they got in their family.
Yeah, I'm sorry it's so tough to talk about it, but thank you for sharing that, Bill. How are you doing on fundraising? Let's talk about something that may bring a smile to your face.
Yeah, so I have been approached by prominent figures in sports, either retired or currently still playing professional sports, prominent figures out of Hollywood, either retired or still acting, either through their agent or directly. And they all said, please don't give up, please keep going. And this is why I try to explain to everybody, those individuals who have access to that large sum of money are watching to see if we're a flash in the pan or not. And whether you can donate $25 or $100 or whatever you can donate, because they're watching. They watch it. It's publicly available. They can watch, see how many people commit and donate. And as you donate, what they're going to see is, hey, look, this isn't Bill. This isn't his group of 7 or 8 volunteers, because we're all volunteers. We're not getting paid for this. This isn't 1 or 2 people donating. This is thousands of people. So you think about it, here in the States, we ran this the other day. There are 7 million single dads, 7 million here in the United States. Let's just say half of them donated $1. We more than doubled what our request for the initial. And if the people watching that are holding on to their money, and you know how it works, it's accountants and attorneys going, hang on, let's see where this goes. They now see that go, our $1 million goal just gets smoked because 2 million dads donated $1. $1.
Well, I think it's important in this type of work. I think it's important to remember when you have a success, celebrate that success, share that success. You're going to have failures too. Don't let that depress you, and just keep carrying on. I think is very important.
You know, it's. I'm glad you said that, because what's interesting is, and the Germans have a word for it, if I'm using it properly, it's called Schadenfreude. In other words, people would rather celebrate your failure than your success. You know, they'll remember your failure versus your successes. And quite frankly, that's why we chose the honey badger as our spirit animal for the foundation. Is we just don't give a flip. We really don't. We don't care, because to be honest with you, the law is on our side. The law is against these courts and these judges and the attorneys, and it's actually against the state, because the state's tolerated this and put up with it. You know, I said earlier, one of my dreams is to videotape the judge getting him processed in prison. But also one of my dreams is to see the state of Georgia file for default. So you can't bankrupt the state in the United States. Federal government will step in. But we're going to get them to lift the statute of limitations. We're going to lift it to go back 30, maybe 40 years. And we can do that. There's case law supporting that. And then from that, when we sue the state of Georgia, essentially in abject bankruptcy, the citizenry here is going to revolt. They're going to say, why would you sue the state? I don't want my taxes to go up. Well, guess what? You didn't care. You didn't care about me and other veterans. You let this go on. You let those vile, toxic judges sit on the bench. You kept voting. We vote our judges here. You kept voting them back. You didn't care to put you here to the ground and listen to what they're doing in court. So we don't care about you. My goal is to take all these fathers that have suffered financially, make them whole, but also get them access to mental health counseling. You said earlier, what else are we doing? That's it. We got to get them help and their kids to help, because the damage goes everywhere. It just isn't isolated. It's a ripple. It goes everywhere with this. Sorry, carrying on.
So we're getting close to having to wrap this up, but I just want to just clarify a couple of things. So so the laws related to divorce and custody and access, do they vary state by state?
They do somewhat. So as you're aware, family court is more of a state-run process, and it falls under the federal guidelines. So, and they have allowed that carve-out to take place for family court and child custody. And there are different state guidelines to follow. But what we're seeing, and our paralegals are helping with this, is basically it's the same. There's not very many state laws that give specific guidance on how these courts should be conducted. They're making it up as they go along.
And let me just ask one other question, because I know how you feel, and many of us feel, about trying to get a politician on side. But sometimes, are you fundraising as well to try and get a lobbyist? I mean, getting somebody loud to try and address these issues and get some attention, in your state legislatures and other places, that may be, it may be interesting just from getting as much publicity on it as possible.
Yeah, we've had a lot of veterans, a lot of men that have been in the father's rights movement for a long time who've made inroads with politicians and very prominent people in industry and corporate America. And they're gradually warming their ear and opening those doors for us. So to answer your question, you had two of them. One, yes, Joseph, we're looking to make those moves eventually. But to answer the other question about lobbyists cost money.
Yeah, they're very expensive. Yeah.
They're expensive, baby.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations for what you're doing and what you've accomplished so far. I think it's wonderful that you're making this effort and that you're connecting with so many people, and it's really nice that you're sharing your story with people as well.
Bill, what I'd ask, because we're getting close to close now, but if you can continue to share with us once something is no longer privileged, when you're able to share something, by way of success or some more movement, we'd like to be able to share that as well, and maybe have you come back on and talk more about this, because really it's a matter of growth for you. You're really starting out and you're starting to develop this. So I think you've got a lot to come, and hopefully we can share that more in further episodes with you.
Right. No, I'd be more than happy to. And just like to say something to the legal community, and that is, I made a video about this. You run a business. Your business is generating revenue, but your business is also enforcing the laws according to how they're written in the book and taking care of your clients. So if you're looking for a new avenue, father's rights is untapped. It's an oil well gushing oil from the ground. You can walk with a ladle and scoop it up. So if you look at a play in a market, this is the next coming. And with every nonprofit, and ChatGPT is a perfect example of this, started off as nonprofit, heavily funded. It spun out very profitable companies that are wholly or partially owned subsidiaries under the nonprofit. And that's the way nonprofits work. Think of it like a business incubator. We have several companies we're looking to spin out as soon as we're funded, as soon as we start winning these lawsuits. I mean, it's a business. Let's generate some revenue. Let's get these states into bankruptcy. Because, and here's something for you. I'm sorry I'm taking time.
No, go ahead.
The law firms we're working with, they want some of these cases go in front of SCOTUS, the Supreme Court. The reason is they're like, look, they're going to look at the basic context of the law, how it was originally written. Then they're going to look how it's applied, and we win. That now puts all 50 states and 4 U.S. territories in significant jeopardy of bankruptcy. That's immediately what that does. They literally tell me, we're hoping one of these bill go in front of the Supreme Court because we're going to win. It's hands down. It's a no-brainer. Well,
let's close on that, and let's wish you a lot of luck with it, because you got a tough road to go down, but we're there, and you've got our support, and we're very thankful for you coming on and sharing and talking about this very special foundation of yours. Well, I'm happy to be here, and I'm really, really honored and privileged you had me on. Like I said, I've been watching you, and I got a ton of respect for you. Bill, thank you so much. We'll stay in touch.
We will.
We'll keep messaging, and have a good night.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was interesting, and
it was.
It was great for Bill to come on, but you can see the pain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of this emanates from pain and the devastation that many people go through the family court process, and then what we commonly see, criminal charges as well.
And as he said, healing doesn't end. You could tell. It's an ongoing process for the guy.
Some people, it's very hard to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he also recognized, veterans are just one group. He feels is underrepresented, but there's so many fathers who are being alienated from their children and caught up in the family court system in a way that's very unfair. And more and more groups are starting up, and I think it's great to see that happening, because it's important for people. It's frustrating that they can't get the results as quickly as they'd like to, but I think it's very important emotionally for them to find other people who've been through the same situation.
Right. And, in Canada, I mean, it's interesting, though, we don't just deal with fathers. I mean, when we're dealing with the criminal side of something, we've had our fair share over the last couple of years of mothers, women who have been charged for domestic violence, which we would just be like, what are you talking about? And then it plays out in the family court process. There's one case we just have, which will complete soon with a withdrawal, but it depends on how how you can manipulate the system, and each side learns how to manipulate it, and who can get that evidence first. So, it's great that there's organizations like
and I
that.
hope to see more of them, starting up. In the meantime, you should
the Pillow Talk.
Yeah.
Don't
Our
forget
Pillow
to like,
Talk time.
comment,
It's Pillow Talk with
subscribe,
Diana. It's a
and
new
share.
podcast.
If you enjoy the podcast and want to see more of them, it's important to support the work we're doing, and hopefully you're enjoying the variety of guests and topics that we're
More to come
engaged
now
with.
that we've figured out Zoom.
I know, that's exciting. Very exciting.
Yes, we're getting with technology.
We really are catching
Good night,
up.
everybody.
Good
Thank you
night.
so much.